Hey, everybody, Chris Parker here, back with the Leader Matters podcast. Leadership lessons from a career, education, coaching, athletic administration. Come from Parker Resources here, trying to help leaders in every field become better leaders. We got 100 episodes. Today is going to be the third episode. We're going to talk about because the leader matters. Leadership is hard. The best magic program you can have is being a great leader. So, our episode 3, the 3 pillars of leadership. These 3 things, what you're going to find is these 3 things we're going to talk about encompass about 90%. I don't think it's 100, but it's close of the issues. I don't care who you are, what kind of leader you are. Everything you're dealing with is going to come down to relationships, communication, and having some toughness. You're going to find that everything you deal with causes those 3 things. Now, toughness could be discipline. Some people might word that different. I was a coach, so I'm going to say toughness, but relationship, communication, toughness are going to hit you there. So you got to be organized. Well, that's part of communication. You got to present and deliver information. That's part of communication. You got to be able to get people to like you. That's part of, you can't please everybody. That's part of relationships. You got to deal with it when it's tough. That's toughness. You got to avoid petty problems. You got to put your vision over your feelings. All that stuff's toughness. So you're going to find that everything we talk about fits into these categories. So, Chris, I got Chris Wallace, a good friend, a principal at Pickens with me this whole week. So, Chris, what comes to mind when you think of those 3 things? Can you attest that most everything you deal with on a daily basis deals with these things?
Oh, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on again. And start out with relationships. I mean, in our business, everything we should do and every decision we make has to be focused on, how it affects kids. And every dollar we spend and every decision has to be centered around that. And I think that in order for you to know what is best for kids, you got to have the relationships with them. We depend on the teachers who are boots on the ground in the trenches every day, obviously to have those relationships, and the coaches and the directors and all the people that serve them in a lot of capacities throughout our school outside of the classroom as well. But right there in the classroom, relationships matter. As a leader, though, building those relationships with your faculty, with the staff, people you bring on, having your different layers, your leadership team, your admin team, and all those people, the relationships set the foundation for how you're able to communicate and how you're able to get anything done in your school. And the old Teddy Roosevelt, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care quote, is used a lot, but it's so simple and so true. They have to know you care about them and that you want more out of them than just for them to raise your test scores. It can't be all about just performance. It's got to be about, we're looking for growth in some areas. We want to see some of these kids, the 2s become 3s and the 3s become 4s and all that. But we want to see them grow, and obviously we do want them to achieve, but it can't be just centered upon that. If they feel like you only have them there to try to get something out of them or try to get some benefit for you, then people see right through that. So you have to have that relationship, you have to have those communication tactics, and you do have to be tough and not get your feelings hurt. So all of that stuff you're right. It is named the pillars for a reason. That is very appropriate.
Well, I think what we'll talk about over the next, 80 or so of these are these 3 things. And there's probably 10 or 12 lessons in each one of them that we'll go through specifically, and then some that'll be indirectly attached to them. But the key is building relationships. Everything has to go through relationships. Really, none of this matters if people don't like you and people don't want to respect you and listen to you and trust you. The most important thing that relationships give the leader is trust. It doesn't mean they have to like you because you bought them some ice cream or something. I'm not talking about that. I mean, they have to trust that you're the person for the job. If there's no buy-in without trust, this is giving away a lesson down the road, but there's no buy-in. Everybody wants to know how we get our people to buy in. How do you get teachers, at your school, teachers who they're going to make the same amount of money whether they buy in or don't. How do you get them to buy? Well, they got to buy into the leader. How do they buy into the leader? They got to have trust. How do they get trust? They have to develop their relationship with that person that gives them the sense that they can trust them. So if you don't have that one, the other 2 really don't matter.
That's right.
But a mistake some people make is all they got is relationships. I know we know some people who are super good. Everybody likes them. They're super good at being in relationships. But they're horrible communicators, They're just good guys or good girls, ladies that people love. But they can't be a real effective leader just by building relationships. You got to have that. But then you got to take your great relationships and turn it into positive communication, meaning put things in ways people can understand, present and deliver information, be organized, make sure you're emailing people, covering things, make sure you're in meetings, being effective, all the things you got to do to be a communicator, because now these people like you. Now they see you communicating. They say, okay, we trust this guy. We believe in his mission or her mission. Now the communication of what's expected of me is there. We can really take off. But then the last piece, which is where I see a lot of people fail, is you got to be able to build relationships and communicate even when it's hard. Because I think it's easy. People work hard on relationships. They work hard on communication when things are going well, but the reality is, like as a coach, if we had parents trying to get us fired, I still had to build these relationships with these players. I still had to communicate what time practice was going to end. And I still had to do a good job, with the booster club. I couldn't let that somebody's trying to get me fired get in the way of that. I couldn't let that the middle school coach isn't working with me get in the way with that. If I'm the athletic director, I can't worry that the soccer team's doing this or the basketball team's doing this. That can affect that. I have to keep building relationships and keep communicating. You have to be able to do it even in the tough times. And that's why I think that toughness piece, working with all the different aspects you have to work with and continuing that vision. Because I found that most people have a great vision and a great plan until something stops working. Somebody gets down on them. Mike Tyson said everybody has a plan until they got hit. Well, metaphorically speaking, some of these leaders have plans until they get hit, not literally, but until some major issue happens. And then all of a sudden they're not as good at communicating. They're not putting as much work into building relationships and those things. Do you understand what I mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're straight right on point there. And I think it's because people get distracted by the one thing and let the one thing take over the focus of everything else they do. And so part of that is that toughness, is mental toughness, and being able to juggle and being able to take those shots here and there. And leadership is one thing. You can't have thin skin, and you're going to have critics no matter how well you're doing or where you're suffering or failing at. You're going to have critics, and you got to realize that not everybody sees it from the same point of view, and people have different viewpoints or have different opinions about how things will go. And you got to take that as it comes to you. But that toughness is really a big part of this, and I think that's something you have to learn after being in there and going through some situations. I've been through some tough situations since I've been principal. It's my 5th year, and I'm sure I'll have more to face. But I'm better at facing them now than I was 4 years ago. I can tell you that. I've learned some tactics that have made it a little bit better, and part of that is just taking what's dealt in front of you, taking a step back, thinking about all the facts and parts and pieces, and trying to look ahead and try to predict the future, if you will, and think about how it's going to affect everybody, your decisions and how you handle the situation. And that just gets part of growing as a leader. It's not easy. I mean, it's something you can work on, but you kind of have to be in there in the trenches to get better at it, honestly.
Yeah, that's right. But these are the 3 things. So, we're getting a little closer into these 100 episodes. This is 3 of getting into the details. So you need to think of most of these lessons as, is this a lesson that involves building relationships, being a better communicator, or developing the toughness you need to be successful? Everything from here on out is going to fall into those categories for the most part. So what can you do to build those things? So starting with this episode, you kind of ask this question at the end, and reflect as you're hearing this. What are you good at in building relationships? What do you need to work on? What are you good at in communicating? What do you need to work on? When do you show some toughness? When do you maybe need to work on toughness? And what's going to be interesting, I think, is if you listen to all 100 of these, at the end, I think your answers will be a little different than they are right now, because you'll have a little better understanding of what exactly these things are. And so I hope you can grow and develop these things, but really take a moment and think about, what am I good at? What am I not good? Where do I struggle? Where do I need to improve? I'm really good at building relationships, but I struggle with communicating, or vice versa. Or I'm good at communicating, but I struggle embracing this part of communication. Or that's okay, guys. Everybody struggles. If you're saying you don't struggle with anything, you're lying, and you shouldn't be listening to this, because you either know everything or we're not going to be able to help you. So work to improve, reflect, ask yourself, and we'll probably do this at the end of all these now, whatever the topic was, what are you doing well about that? What can you work on? And so you ask yourself that, you get better. There you go. Remember, the best way to improve your organization is to have better leadership. If you are the leader, then, you don't want them to change leaders. So get better, make a better leader by you getting better. So at Parker Resource, we got all kind of stuff to help you out. Come see us sometime. We're on every social media platform, podcast, books, whatever. And we'll help you any way we can. Chris, thanks for joining me this week. It's been a fun one. And we'll talk to you soon on this.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me again.